All right, let's jump right in. We're going to tackle a question that families and really entire societies have been debating for a long, long time. It's one of those big questions that gets to the heart of what helps a kid succeed. So here it is, the big question. Does a mother's job help or hurt her child's school success? You've heard the arguments, right? Does the extra income and having a working role model make up for maybe having less time at home? Well, today we're going to look at how one big scientific study tried to cut through all the noise and find a real answer. To do that, we're digging into a really interesting study from 1999, which took place in Taichung, Taiwan. Researchers there looked at the school performance of more than 1,400 high school students to figure out what was really moving the needle on their grades. They decided that a family's influence pretty much boils down to three main things. They called them cultural capital, economic resources, and the supervisory role. So let's quickly unpack what each of these actually means. First up, cultural capital. Now, this isn't just about whether your parents have a fancy degree hanging on the wall. It's more about the whole vibe they create at home because of their education. Being able to help with tricky homework, encouraging reading, and just making learning feel important. Next, we've got economic resources. This is the one most people probably think of first. It's the money, the cash that can pay for things like better schools, private tutors, books, or just a quiet, stable place to study. And the last piece of the puzzle is the supervisory role. This one gets right to that classic worry. If a mom is working, does that mean there's less supervision? Less time checking in on homework and just being there? The study wanted to see if that really had an effect. Okay, so the researchers gathered all their data from those 1,440 students, fired up their computers, and ran the numbers. They were looking for a simple, straightforward link between a mother working and how well her kid did in school. And this is where we get our first big surprise. When they looked at all the students together, boys and girls all lumped in one group, they found nothing. Statistically speaking, a mother's job seemed to have zero impact on her child's success. It looked like a dead end. But, and this is a huge but, the real story was hiding just beneath the surface. Yeah, it turns out that initial no-effect finding wasn't just wrong. It was actually misleading. The real story, the juicy part, only came out when the researchers did one simple thing. They split the data by gender. What was happening with the sons and daughters was so different that when you looked at them together, the effects just canceled each other out. And boom, all of a sudden, a completely different picture snapped into focus. It was way more complex. For sons, their mom's education was a huge plus, but her having a job was a major negative. For daughters, both parents' education mattered, but a mom's job didn't have any effect at all. The rules were totally different for boys and girls. This discovery totally flipped some traditional ideas on their head. That old, like father, like son saying? Well, this study found that wasn't the case at all. There was this powerful cross-gender thing happening. For a son's success in school, his mother was the most important person. Let's dig into that. Okay, so for the sons, the story was all about mom. If she was highly educated, it gave them a massive academic boost. But, and this is the kicker, if she was employed, it was linked to them doing significantly worse in school. And what's really wild is that their father's education and income didn't really seem to matter, statistically. Now, for the daughters, the story is completely different. Their success was built on a foundation from both parents. Their moms and their dad's education levels were both super important. A stable marriage was also a big plus. And, really importantly, whether their mom worked or not, it made no difference to their grades. So now that we've seen all the nitty-gritty details for sons and daughters, let's zoom back out. Let's take those three original ideas, cultural capital, economic resources, and that supervisory role, and see how they actually stack up against each other based on all this evidence. And when you lay it all out like this, a pretty clear pecking order starts to emerge. It shows that when it comes to a kid's schoolwork, not all types of family influence are created equal, not by a long shot. And here it is, the number one takeaway from all of this. What parents knew was way more important than what they earned. That cultural capital, that whole learning environment they create, was by far the most powerful and reliable predictor of success for both sons and daughters. And on the flip side, what mattered the least? Money. The family's income had a surprisingly weak effect. Now, the researchers thought this might be because in Taiwan at that time, education was just valued so incredibly highly by everyone,
rich or poor, and high school was more affordable, so money just wasn't as big of a factor.
All right, this has all been really fascinating, but before we wrap this up, we need to talk about something that is absolutely critical here, and that's context. Because when you're looking at studies like this, context is everything.
Just remember, this was a snapshot in time. It was Taiwan way back in 1999. I mean, think about how much the world has changed in the last 25 plus years. The internet has totally transformed how we learn, economies have shifted, and what we expect from moms and dads is constantly evolving.
So this study gives us an amazing historical baseline. It shows us what was true back then, which leaves us with a really big question for today. In our world, right now, what do you think matters most? Is it still all about that cultural capital, or has money become more important? And what about the impact of a mother's work on her son? Has that changed? This study gives us a fantastic place to start the conversation about what might be different today and what might change tomorrow.